Well, hello there, boys and girls, friends, relatives, pets, and soccer moms. I don't know why I said that, but I did. I'm Jen Koken, and it's 9:45 on Wednesday in the AM, and you know what that means. It's time for Java with Jen, Java with Jen, Java with Jen, Java with Jen. And today it's Jen and my good friend, Candy Barone, and I'm going to say a few things about Candy. Hi, Candy. Everybody wave. Candy's
Hi,
welcome. Yay! Welcome to the neighborhood today. She is a leadership alignment coach and a certified human design specialist. What I love most about her is how she and Candy and I have known each other for a couple of years now. She has blown me away with how she brings in human design. She always blows my mind. You blow my mind when you and I are talking. You're like, well, you got a channel 43 and a channel 42, and that's a 5 to your 7. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, but she'll break it down for us. So I wanted to bring her on Java with Jen today so that we could look at the intersection between those two things. Before I say that, though, she's also an Amazon bestselling author and host of the soon-to-be reinvigorated podcast Aligned as Fuck. And I like a friend who can say a good fuck. Say it with me, LinkedIn. You know you want to. Uh-huh.
Right.
Mhm.
Oh, good fucks.
Okay. So let's have a little chitter chat. The other thing to know about Candy is, much like me, she talks a mile a minute. Sometimes you have to hurry up your listening in order to hear her, and she has a lot to say. We have a short time to do it. So, Candy, number one, here's one thing. Something that always strikes me about you. You are like this sponge for information. I'm going to use another analogy. You're like a pit bull on a pork chop. When you want to go after something, you go after it. So when you started getting into human design, every time I turned around, you're like, I got another certification. I'm reading another book, yada, yada. Why? Because I know you've been a coach for a long time. You've been a leadership coach for a long time. You coach teams, you coach in corporate. I'm sure you have used every assessment under the sun. There's a fly buzzing around. Have you seen it? It's like making circles like a helicopter around my head. I just saw it whiz by. It seems to me that human design is really, really just so intriguing to you, more so than any of the other assessments you've used previously. What is it about human design that for you, you're so passionate about?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And there's a couple ways I'm going to answer that. One, first of all, that analogy I'm going to steal, that I'm a pit bull, especially since my little Ernie Banks is a pit bull on a pork chop, because it is very true.
Yes.
But as if you were to dig into my chart, it actually is part of my nature. I have a what's known as a
wait. I know you. What is human design? We should start there.
Yeah, so we'll start there, because I was just going to say it actually is very, it's very big in my chart. Why? Before I even tell you what human design is, though, why this called to me, it's interesting because in the study of human design, Karen Curry Parker likes to say, you don't choose human design, it chooses you. And I will say that was very much my path, because I resisted it when it first showed up 6.5 years ago for me. In fact, I wanted to punch it in the face. And my initial response, especially with all of my good corporate training, was, I don't need one more woo-woo fucking thing in my life right now, because I had just come off a very deep spiritual retreat, which like left me feeling a little exposed and raw. And the last thing I wanted was one more thing coming at me. That being said, I was very quick to also understand, because I thought, like you, it was an assessment. Human design is not an assessment. So that, because I am an assessment junkie.
Me too.
I have taught everything. I still teach DISC, Myers-Briggs, personality, colors, you name it. I've been in it. I can't get enough of assessments, because I love exploring how people are wired and how they behave in certain situations, especially in conflict. Think about what an assessment is for a minute. When you do an assessment, what do you do, Jen?
You're assessing, you're making a judgment about
something. Yes, based on what? A series of questions, right?
Based on a series of questions, and based on what I already know and my history and my experience.
Right. And also based on, did you have your coffee in the morning? Did you get in a car traffic jam? Did you get in an argument with your spouse or your partner? Like, it's a very subjective way. I know even in my 20 years in corporate, people are like, your DISC never changes. I'm like, the fuck it doesn't. Mine has changed multiple times depending on where I'm at in my own growth journey. And it was one thing when I was in corporate, and it was something very different when I left corporate. Now, there are nuances that stay the same, but it's not a fixed entity. It is a function of where we're at emotionally, energetically, like all the things. Human design, on the other hand, is an energetic blueprint. So what happens is it's taking a coordinate, so to speak, of the time of birth, date of birth, and location of birth. And it's bringing in this beautiful synthesis of Eastern philosophy and Western science. And what it's doing is it's mapping your innate wiring or operating plan that shows you, with whatever soul contract you signed to come in here to actually lead your work, your purpose. There is a curriculum you have that says this is what optimal high performance looks like, and this is where you're going to get yourself kicked in the ass multiple times, and this is some of what you're here to learn. And so what happens is, if you've ever seen the movie, the easiest way I can explain human design, have you ever seen the Pixar movie Soul with Jamie Foxx?
Okay, I haven't.
Okay. Well, there's a scene. He wants to be a jazz musician. And for those of you that have seen it, if you remember, there's a scene where he signs his soul contract in the air, sort of. And then he waits in this line for the portal to open so that he can come through and live out.
Okay, now I need to watch the movie. You're speaking my language.
Right. And so this is what human design is. We signed a soul contract that said, I'm coming into the world to lead. Because leadership is everyone's opportunity, which is one of the reasons you and I like playing in space together, because I do not believe it's some people were, bestowed some granted gift of you get to be a leader and you don't. That's a bunch of crap. We all have capacity to lead when we activate the unique gifts, the unique leadership voice, and our specific purpose being a unique piece of the cosmic puzzle. When we know what our space is and what we're here to awaken, activate, and amplify, human design is simply your operating plan. It is not who you are. You get to decide that. You have free will. It is how you are. It is an operating plan that says this is how you work, rest, and play best. This is how you interact with others in the universe and the world. This is how you lead best. This is how you take care of yourself. This is how. That is what human design is. And that's where it's different than an assessment.
Okay. So you got the how, but it's up to us to implement, to take advantage of.
Absolutely.
Now.
Absolutely.
And I'm loving, because we do speak, we're like two peas in a pod so much. You're speaking my language. And okay. So now I want to go back to something you said earlier where you're like, oh my God, something woo. You come from corporate. Most people in corporate, I have found, publicly shy away from the woo. Maybe privately woo. I was privately woo. I was woo private. I was woo adjacent for a long time until I went into business for myself 9 years ago. And I'm like, oh no, we're going to talk about how I channel. We're going to talk about my intuition. We're going to talk about all those things, right? I'm going to bring all my gifts. I would never have named those. So how would you talk about this? Because a lot of the folks listening are people, you're like, oh my God, I can't wait. Okay.
I love this question so much because Jen, my background is engineering. This is also why we work, because I love my STEM spaces. I am a mechanical engineer by background who also did 2 masters in an engineering capacity till I got my MBA.
Why'd you do 2? Hold on. Why'd you do 2?
Well, one was an environmental engineering, and then I did an engineering management. And I'm like, oh my God, I hated engineering the first time. Why am I doing this at a master's level? And I need a freaking microbiology master's and an organic chemistry. Oh my God, I just was like, I just need the MBA. And it was just, I don't know, because part of it was.
I'm going to channel Ernie, your dog.
Yeah, right. Well, some of it was, even the whole reason I became an engineer is because a lot of people chirped in my ear and told me I couldn't. And I said, fucking watch me. And so I became one of the few women that went to a private engineering school and got a mechanical engineering degree and didn't even know there were 4 other women in my program till I graduated. So that being said, what was interesting for me, because I've always been silently woo or adjacent woo, and I've been so
privately woo.
And here's the best part about it. Fucking woo is just physics. It is physics. It's talking about energy. And guess what? When you look at human design, one of the things that gets me so, I jones over human design because it's quantum mechanics, quantum physics, and epigenetics. Talk about the geek nerd, engineer in me going, oh, I get to understand the energy of people. Because people will say to me, Candy, how does a mechanical engineer do the work you're doing now? I'm a 6 Sigma black belt even. And I'm like, I just don't work with products and widgets. I work with people, emotions, and mindset. But I'll tell you, the DMAIC process for Six Sigma is exactly what I do in my coaching. I just call it something different. So it's
Whoa.
energy. We're talking about energy can be neither be created nor destroyed. We're talking about the laws of thermodynamics. We're talking about when you look at human design from a scientist, and I love the way Adam Grant talks about this, and think again, be a scientist. When we look at it as a scientist, it's just basically giving you the experiment for you to test and be in. And that's what human design is. It's this huge experiment for us to understand where's our current energy, vibration, frequency, narrative, and how can we activate more potential, more momentum, bigger alignment in our energy. It's just quantum mechanics and quantum physics. So that's for all of you, all of my STEM people, engineers, all of my corporate people. Woo woo is nothing more than energy. And guess what? Everything is made of energy.
Nothing more than quantum physics and quantum mechanics. I love it. I could feel like Albert Einstein and his wife, by the way, his first wife, like smiling down at us.
Right.
Have you ever read the book?
I feel that too.
Have you ever read the book, The Other Einstein?
No, but I'm about to write it down.
Yeah, you're such a huge reader. There's a great woman, I'm going to forget her name, but she writes about, there's the other Einstein, the only woman in the room, about Hedy Lamarr. Another book, Carnegie's Maid, about how, and some of this, you know, she's taking from history, but she's also making her own conclusions, how she believes that it was Carnegie's maid who he was secretly in love with, who kind of propelled him to be a philanthropist, and that it was Einstein's first wife who actually discovered the theory of relativity, not him. And he never.
Well, I love that, because that's also, that just gave me chills, Jen, because I don't know if you're aware. I don't know if you're aware. One of the reasons why the alignment with human design and leadership is so critical is because we are shifting into an energy that's moving us out of what's called cross of planning in the global human design, which is this very imbalanced, patriarchal, industrial governance into this very delicious, divine, feminine in the cross of the sleeping phoenix that's coming February 2027.
Yes. And I'll say one more thing about that. I saw a friend talk about it as the age of Sophia, but also I've seen some indigenous folks talk about it, how we've been this bird where we've only been flapping with one wing, and we're now about to flap with both wings. The thing I find so interesting, and I know we got off on a tangent, so I have one more question for us to wrap it up, but the thing I find so interesting about the other Einstein is that Einstein did not give his first wife credit, right, to be on the paper that he won a Nobel Prize for, as compared to Madame Curie, whose husband made sure that her name was co-author of every paper. And she was named as one of the Nobel Prize winners. It's always, people ask me, like, why do you work in these male dominated industries? Why is that so interesting? Why do I work there? Because I used to, but why do you work with women in these industries? Madame Curie was one of my first heroines. Followed by, I just drove to Philly for my birthday, 5 hours in the car back and forth to go see Marie Cassatt, who was the only woman that was in the first Impressionist show, the only American woman in the first Impressionist show in France in 1870. Because this is, you know, we want to take up space, and it is our time, and we're moving toward there. So with regard to human design, we've said a lot. Everyone can go back and watch through it, and I'll make sure there's some comments below of how to get in touch with Candy. Where would a person start? Like, where does a person start with human design?
And before I answer that, I just say it's one of the reasons I love Jane Austen as an author, because she also did things where it was a very dominated field, and when was told not, she stepped forward. And so starting with human design, I would say there's two places. One is run your chart, and you can run your chart a lot of places for free. You can run it off my website for free. If someone tries to charge you for their chart, go kicking and screaming and running, because you can get your chart from a lot of different places.
But go to your website. We'll put your website down below.
Yes. And if you go to my website, you can also download a free summary report that gives you about 20 pages to help you understand the fundamentals. And this is the piece that I think is missing for a lot of people that decide to jump down that rabbit hole, is a lot of times you want to bypass the fundamentals to get to what feels sexy in the chart. And I will tell you, you need to ground yourself in 5 aspects of your chart before you do anything else in all the nuances. And one is understanding your type, understanding the strategy for your type, understanding your authority. All of that dictates how you make decisions best. Understanding your profile, which looks like the fraction when you run your chart, and understanding the difference between the openness and the definition that lives in the centers, the 9 elements that look like the chakras, which I'd get into that later, but understanding whether they're colored or not, what that means for you in terms of how you access energy and how you broadcast energy, because your human design is just an operating plan of how you use energy, either energy you have consistent access to that you are drawing from yourself, or energy that you are absorbing and attracting and amplifying from the world around you, including the way the planets move and your interactions with others. So we have soul curriculums that are things for us to learn, that are how to activate our superpowers and gifts. That's the energy we have. And then the energy that we're sampling from others is where we get wise around our own discernment boundaries. It's where imposter syndrome lives. But Jen, you do a lot of work in imposter syndrome. I will tell you, imposter syndrome does not stem from the same place for every person. When you look at someone's chart and you look at their openness, I know your imposter syndrome comes from trying to figure out and be certain about your decisions, where your imposter syndrome stems from you don't feel safe and you have a fear of failure and you have a fear. Like, that openness is very telling to know the root cause for where your imposter syndrome and where you're prone for burnout. I would say you can go down a bazillion rabbit holes, because it is the endless rabbit hole, or find somebody qualified to do a foundational reading for you.
There you go. And that would be you.
Take 60 minutes or 90 minutes and go through your chart and those 5 foundational pieces. You don't need anything else. Just that could change everything about how you work, how you lead, how you take care of yourself, how you give yourself fulfillment, peace, success, la, 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 la.
All the things. And so is it candybarone.com?
It is candybarone.com. And if you go right below my headline, there is a thing right there. Run your chart for
I'm going to go back in and, because I'm going to go back in and run my chart on your site and get those 20 pages.
Yeah, do, because I literally give you a summary of all 5 of those aspects that is very specific to your wiring. And you just go to it's literally spelled Candy Barone. I can't make that up. My parents,
it's also on the screen. Just go to right now. Go now. All right. Anything I didn't ask you that you would like to answer without me asking you?
Yes. Or it's something I would offer.
Yes.
First of all, there are kind of 2 camps of human design. One comes from a very scarce, limiting mindset, and one comes from a very expansive, I have free will and sovereignty. I'm going to say I would offer that you lean this way. And no, regardless of what your chart looks like, that openness that you see, you are not missing anything. You are not broken. There is nothing you are lacking. You have access to everything in the chart. It's just a matter of whether you are drawing it naturally from yourself or drawing it from the world around you. But there is nothing lacking, even if most of your chart looks white. And I think that's a really important thing for people to understand, because it freaks people out sometimes if they have a lot of openness. They automatically start a story of I'm not enough.
Well, it's so interesting that you say that. I started my 3-session live masterclass today on Make Imposter Syndrome Your Superpower. And I always ask at the end of the course, it's small, what's one thing you got out of it? And one of the participants said, and I'm going to get choked up now. And I got choked up then. She goes, I realize there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing I have to fix. And I was like,
I mean, imagine that for a minute, Jen. That gets me really. See, this is why you and I are soul sisters to the core. Because right now I'm about to cry. Because when I think about the fact that I'm so tired of the conversation around how broken we are.
Oh,
There's
so tired.
nothing broken. You are not too much, and you are not, and you. There's nothing
Yes.
lacking that makes you not enough.
And
You are
any
perfectly,
ass hat,
beautifully, completely,
completely.
magnificently, magically, exactly who you're supposed to be to live out
Exactly.
the incarnation, cross, and purpose in this world. And it's
Exactly.
perfect. It's
It's
perfect
perfect.
and whole and like all like that was the one thing I wish people would stop is you're not broken. You never were broken. You never will be broken. Oh my God, we are so fucking not broken. We're not broken.
Yeah. You know, I once had a client who had deep faith, right? And he that was his constant harping. And I said, you believe in God, right? He goes, yeah. I go, do you believe God is perfect, whole, and complete? He said, yeah. I said, do you believe you were made in God's image? And he said, yeah. And I just stopped talking.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If and I have deep faith too. So I believe we're all made in God's image. And if God is perfect, whole and complete, and the essence of love, because
Yep.
love is pure and perfect,
Yep.
and we're made in God's image, then guess what? We are pure and perfect.
Right. It's
Period.
the analogy Wayne Dyer used to say that if you cut a piece of pie out of an apple pie, what do you have? You still have an apple pie.
Yep.
That if we are made from the creator of God, who in the image and likeness, then how can we be anything but perfect?
Right. And you don't believe in God, that's okay. God, Bob, your dog, the universe, whatever you
Oh, I
want to
call
say.
it Penelope. I got a group that they get so wound up around what you call it. I'm like, call it Penelope. I don't care. I
But
don't
I
care.
say Bob because it's the same forwards and backwards.
Right. Yeah. I have a friend that calls it Gus, God, universe, source.
Oh, I love Gus.
Right.
Love
Gus,
that.
ask Gus. I'm like,
Ask Gus.
Penelope, ask Gus.
Ask
It doesn't matter,
Gus.
right?
I love it. All right, my friend. It was so good to have you on here. Love
Oh, thank you.
being with you always. For everybody else, would love to hear in the comments, like, what'd you get out of this? Go to Candy's website, get your human design, get your summary, and you know what? Sign up to do a little 90-minute, 60-minute reading with her. You won't regret it. And until then, this has been Java with Jen, Java with Jen and Candy, Java with Jen, Java with Jen and Candy.